Let me just tell Penelope that we're on a new stream. Okay. Back to the story. So my professor was at this interfaith council. They were talking about fasting, and he was trying to get them to tell him what their detailed definition of fasting was. What was the minimum amount of what a person had to eat before the fast would be considered broken? And they looked at him like he was completely crazy. But that is precisely what happens in Jewish law. We have a whole analysis of what counts as too much water, too much eating, and the measures are minuscule, before you would say the fast had been broken. And this becomes relevant in later codification when someone is not so ill that they just have to eat completely regularly, like a regular meal, but they are ill enough that they should eat some. Then you eat less than the minimum measure for each meal that you have. And that way you're still keeping the fast while also fulfilling what your body needs health-wise in that special circumstance. So this becomes a relevant factor. If somebody, for example, is required to take medicine. There we go. You found me. I heard me. All right, we're going to have to turn that off at the same. Otherwise,
turning the sound off.
Going to get that whole echo effect going. And as like everyone else, I hate the sound of myself in recordings. So similarly, if you need to take medicine, but only need to take the medicine, but you need water to take the pill, then knowing that if you drink the pill or take the pill with only a tiny amount of water rather than a giant mouthful, you're still able to keep the fast would also be a relevant bit of information. So in Judaism, this mattered because things under the radar weren't important. Similar topic, if you are traveling through the mountains and you want to have a drink of water and there's a lovely stream going by, and assuming that you know the water is safe in other ways, are you allowed to just put your glass in and take a drink? Assuming you know that it's a safe water, it doesn't have any random pesticides or other pollutants in it.
Is this on the holidays? Or
No, just regular life. You wouldn't be up in the mountains on the holiday, I hope. But wouldn't you be worried that there might be microscopic, shrimp and other sorts of water living creatures? That there are lots of them. Take any drop of water from a lake and put it under a microscope, and you're going to see a whole zoo living in that water. And I see shutters going around the room, and we all know, of course, that shrimp are not kosher. So am I allowed to drink water without double checking that there are no microscopic shrimp in it?
Yes. I would say yes.
Yes? But kashrut. So why would I be?
Because you can't see it.
Because I can't see,
You
but
have to be able to see it. At least when the laws were written, you had to be visible to the naked eye.
But if the laws were written and the only thing we had was a naked eye, does that mean when magnifying glasses were invented, we upped the ante? And when microscopes were invented, we upped the ante?
Yes, we did.
Actually, no, we didn't.
There was a big controversy about food science and its implications.
There has been a big controversy, and many stringencies have been enacted by certain communities. But even those communities that enact stringencies will still acknowledge that the law is that if it's not visible to the naked eye, then it is not of a concern to halacha. That even if you take it and put it under a microscope and you can see that there are things in there that are not things that we would want to be eating, if it's not visible to the naked eye, you are not under obligation to take it to a microscope before you consume it. Were we to be in that point of obligation, we would never get to eat, because everything possibly has microscopic organisms in them that we're not allowed to eat, and we would constantly be having to dissect every single meal, have it be scanned by microscopes in every single part of it, and well, then it's all been scanned. It's not really food anymore. It's just microscope slides, and those aren't very tasty. But how do we get to this idea? How do we get to this idea that there are limits to what we are expected to do? Because the obligation to follow Torah seems to be rather categorical. So how do we get to say, well, below this level or below that visibility, we're not going to be worried about it? Well, to today's Torah portion gives us a clue, but it doesn't let us off the hook completely. So we're going to balance this issue. Page 1165. If you are in the red Eitz Chaim Chumash, I think we need another spare. Thank you. And if you are playing along in your own copy of the Bible, then you will find it in the book of Deuteronomy, in chapter 29, and we're beginning with verse 9. This is one of those sections where we are reminded that the chapter and verse numbers are not something that were inherently created by the Jewish community. They were created by medieval Christian scholars. We found them useful in general, so we adopted them for our books, but that doesn't mean that our Torah portions or readings are always aligned to their chapter and number system. So starting in the middle of a chapter on verse 9, perfectly normal, because we think this is the better break for this part of the Torah. All right, and I need a volunteer to read, so I have someone to interrupt. Mary, oh, all right, yes.
I'm reading in the Hebrew?
In the English, please. People are welcome and encouraged to read the Hebrew. We will make reference to a few pieces in the Hebrew as we go, but let's get the bulk of the meaning out for the class.
And 9 through?
Well, 9 through 12, where I stop you.
Okay. You stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from wood chopper to water drawer, to enter into the covenant of the Lord your God, which the Lord your God is concluding with you this day, with its sanctions.
All right, pause there. Like I said, sometimes the verse breaks still aren't natural because we're still in the middle of a long sentence, but it's a good place to stop anyway and point out who is included in this covenant. Who's covered by all the stuff we're talking about? All the men? All the children?
The wives.
Wives, meaning women, strangers, even people that aren't necessarily Jewish yet, that are just with us. And doesn't matter whether you are a prince or whether you are a poor water drawer, everybody's involved. Rich, poor, male, female, stranger, native born, everybody is covered. So we can't say anyone's off the hook for the commandments because they fall into a special category that aren't responsible. We are all responsible. This is perhaps the most exhaustive list you're ever going to see of who the covenant covers. And it does a really good job of covering everyone. Onward.
To the end that he may establish you this day as his people and be your God, as he promised you and as he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
All right, and the purpose of the covenant? So we'll be a people, right? We will be a nation, and then God will be fulfilling the promise that he made both to us, meaning those that have left Egypt, as well as to our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Good? Good. And now we're going to broaden the category even more.
I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone.
Someone's phone's going. Hold on.
Is that yours?
It's not mine, I can tell you that. I have a different ringer.
I have the same ring miniature.
It's your busy social calendar. Okay. It's okay. It happens. It happens. All right. Try again.
I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us this day before the Lord our God, and with those who are not with us here this day.
All right. So now let's expand this even further. Even if you weren't at this meeting, you just got volunteered for the covenant. It's how it works. You don't show up for the meeting, you get the job. In this particular case, our sages say this is talking not just about people who may have been sitting outside the camp during this particular moment. This is talking about every future generation of Judaism in all time. This is where we get the famous idea that every Jewish soul was standing there together with God. That every soul that would ever be born was there and therefore obligated to the covenant. So all of our possible limitations, excuses, etc., nope, we're all covered by the same deal. Make sense? Good. Onward.
Well, you know that we dwelt in the land of Egypt, and that we passed through the midst of various other nations. And you have seen the detestable things in the fetishes of wood and stone, silver and gold that they keep. Perchance there is among you some man or woman, or some clan or tribe, whose heart is even now turning away from the Lord our God, to go and worship the gods of those nations. Perchance there is among you a stock sprouting poison weed and wormwood. When such a one hears the words of these sanctions, he may fancy himself immune, thinking, I shall be safe, though I follow my own willful heart, to the utter ruin of moist and dry alike. The Lord will never forgive him, rather will the Lord's anger and passion rage against that man, till every sanction recorded in this book comes down upon him, and the Lord blots out his name from under heaven.
All right, so here we get our next possible exception and then ruled out. All right, so what's this category of person? We've done rich, poor, male, female, stranger, native born, here today, here tomorrow. Who's this guy?
He's not following God.
Yeah, he's the guy who secretly thinks he can get away with it. This is the guy who says, okay, fine. God's talking and giving all these rules, and everyone else is nodding their head, and I'm nodding my head, but inside I'm going, I'm not going to do that, because you know what? I've heard that they got some really wicked idols going in the land of Canaan, or I've got some that I brought with me from Egypt, and as soon as I get a chance, I'm going to set these up, and I'm going to be worshiping them or doing all sorts of other stuff that they do that God just told us not to do, but what difference does it make? Everyone else will be doing what God wants. I'm doing what I want. And God's answer is, come on, what's God say to this person? You got me on a loophole.
No, you're still liable for all the covenant.
You're still liable for the covenant. It doesn't matter that you're doing it secretly and privately. Right? As it said, if you're doing it in your heart, you're going to set it up, you're going to do it, it doesn't matter. And then we get this curious phrase that it will be to the ruin of moist and dry alike. We're not talking about skin lotion. What is moist and dry? What kind of poetic metaphor do you think that might be indicating? What are we talking about here? Everyone's lost in thought prior to Rosh Hashanah?
Well, the commentary says, sorry,
You never be sorry for reading commentary. That means you're doing your job.
honest and deceitful alike.
Right? So apparently, you doing something secretly in the corner of your closet is going to have a negative impact on everyone else in the community, even if they're not. Right? The moist and dry are the difference between righteous and unrighteous. The righteous are often referred to as moist, meaning living and growing and wonderful plants. And dry, not so much, as shriveled and dying and not very very good. Well, apparently the actions of the dry are going to impact the moist. And this is something that a farmer would see regularly. That you can have one plant that's causing trouble, that's falling apart, and it's causing trouble with the other plants around it. And so they're using this metaphor to say, this plant needs to be uprooted because what's happening with it is going to affect everyone else. So what you do in private matters. You don't use that as an excuse for I can do whatever I feel like. Make sense? Okay, onward.
The Lord will single them out from all the tribes of Israel for misfortune, in accordance with all the sanctions of the covenant recorded in this book of teaching. And later generations will ask, the children who succeed you, and foreigners who come from distant lands, and see the plagues and diseases that the Lord has inflicted upon that land, all its soil devastated by sulfur and salt, beyond sowing and producing, no grass growing in it, just like the upheaval of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his fierce anger. All nations will ask, why did the Lord do thus to this land? Wherefore that awful wrath? Okay, wherefore, it's good to Romeo and Juliet. Why this awful wrath? Better English. So the question is, this is going to be such a lasting catastrophe. The secret sinning that you thought you could get away with, but it tore you down as well as everyone else around you, that it will be so stunning, the devastation that follows will be so stunning that people will ask, wow, what happened here? What in the world caused all of this? This is just like catastrophe. That
is how bad this will eventually get. Clear? Onward.
They will be told, because they forsook the covenant that the Lord God of their fathers made with them when he freed them from the land of Egypt, they turned to the service of other gods and worshiped them, gods whom they had not experienced and whom had not allotted to them. So the Lord was incensed at that land and brought upon it all the curses recorded in this book. The Lord uprooted them from their soil in anger, fury, and great wrath, and cast them into another land, as it is still the case.
Same way you might pick up a weed and throw it out of the yard, or a failing plant that was causing a blight to the rest. You're throwing it over the fence in your neighbor's yard. That's the metaphor that's being used here. So apparently, violation of the covenant, even in private, is so bad that it will have a lasting impact on even the righteous that are around it. That seems to be setting the bar rather high for our vigilance when it comes for our own actions. And perhaps it's setting the bar very high for our vigilance about our neighbors' actions. What do you think? If moist and dry alike, if righteous and unrighteous alike are going to have these catastrophic repercussions because of what some guy is doing in his basement, then what does that imply about our responsibility as a community? Nothing?
We need to take care of each other.
We need to take care of each other. Can I push a little bit further? I need to kick down the door to your basement?
No, but you need to be aware.
I need to be aware. But how can I be aware without intruding into your private life? I mean, I'm assuming that when you invite me over for coffee and tea, you're not going to show me the idol that you have in the basement, because you know that I'm not into that sort of thing. So how am I supposed to know that you're up to no good without intruding to your secret world that you have created this no good in? I mean, isn't this calling for neighbor versus neighbor of regulation?
Does it maybe do the opposite? Does it maybe kind of like imply that we need to create community and be with those that are like us and not encourage that and kind of, I guess the same way, like throw it out of our lives, if you will?
So certainly, definitely, the proactive response to all of this is you build a community, you look after each other, you make sure that people all know what the values, the norms, and the goals of the community are, and the importance of our our interconnectedness. That what you do affects me, so therefore you should be good, not just for yourself, but also be good because it helps me. All of that is the proactive stuff that you want to raise the children with, that you want to reinforce in your social actions. You want to make sure people feel loved, cared for, and benefit from the society. But you know, they still might be doing stuff in the basement. And if they are, we're all in trouble. Okay.
But if it's not visible to the naked eye,
well, that's
part of it?
That is part of it. In fact, let's get the next verse in here, which is a very odd verse to come at this point in the Torah.
And it's got that special dots.
And it's got the special dots, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Concealed acts concern the Lord our God, but with overt acts, it is for us and for our children and our children ever to apply all the provisions of this teaching.
All right, so concealed acts, nitzavim, over on the right-hand side, that's for God. That which is concealed is God's, like as in a possessive kind of noun, you know. So this is my chair, that's your chair. These are my acts, those are God's acts. These I am responsible for, those God is responsible for. The concealed acts are God's domain. God will police them. God will be in charge of them. Whereas the revealed acts, things that are done in a manner in which that we can see them, that is for us and for our children forever in order to do according to the laws and according to the words of the Torah and according to the words of this instruction. It seems a very odd counterpoint to what we just read. Because we just read about a guy doing stuff in secret as being a major catastrophe and a potential poison for the whole community that would get all of us blasted with blight. And then right afterwards, we get a verse that says, Yeah, but the secret stuff God takes care of. You just have to take care of the revealed stuff. So which is it? I mean, now I'm paranoid about my neighbor, but I've just been told God's on the case. Am I supposed to feel better? Am I supposed to still be paranoid?
And this is said during the confessional, right?
Yes. That actually worked quite well. Got a little cushion of air for the handouts.
Well, the commentary 28 says concealed act.
Yes.
Sins committed secretly are known to God, and He will punish them.
Correct. So one interpretation that's supposed to use precisely that if it happened in secret, then there's nothing you can do about it. But God will do something about it. So first of all, let's make sure we understand the definition of what does concealed mean. Right? What is a secret act? Hidden. What does hidden mean? Does hidden mean if I turn my back and I bring up my idol app, to do my little prayer to idol, and you catch a glimpse over my shoulder, is that hidden or not hidden? I certainly was hiding it, but you did see it. So it's not hidden because you saw it, but it was being hidden by me just ineffectually. Right? So hidden, you might say, is it the intent? I didn't want anyone to see when I was murdering that guy. So it's a hidden act. And the fact that you happen to see it, that doesn't change my intent. I wanted it to be hidden. We can't really use intent as I wanted my crime to be in secret. Too bad you saw me, but it doesn't matter because it's what I wanted that matters. We're not going to use that as our test of whether it's not. So in general, revealed means that there were witnesses. Or does it mean just there was a witness? In Jewish law, for prosecution under a court, how many witnesses do you need to a crime?
2.
Absolutely, right? So for actual guilt in a court, you need 2 witnesses. Absolutely, over and over again. If you're unclear on that, go watch the old YouTubes of Sanhedrin that we've been studying. They make it very, very clear. You need 2 witnesses. They are rigorously cross-examined. Their testimony has to be corroborated between the 2 of them, and they have to be of unimpeachable character and without any doubt about the honesty that they present. So that's for a real guilt verdict. But if one witness sees somebody doing something wrong, does that turn it to be revealed and now I get to kick down your basement to see if there's more evidence? Let's talk and see how our commentators have handled this text. All right. So, Laura, if you will continue with the handout text, so I don't have to find a new volunteer. We're going to begin with the Rashi at the top.
I will not punish you for the inscrutable, which is Adonai our God's. He will punish that individual.
Right, which is sort of where the commentary in Eitz Chaim came in, that you don't need to worry about punishing things that are secret. God will take care of it. However, and those are always good words, or a good word, however means something is coming.
However, what is exposed is for us and our posterity to eradicate evil from our midst. If we fail to implement justice against them, then the community will be punished.
All right, so how is Rashi understanding this tension between our last verse and all of that, get the secret guy because the rest of us are also in danger? How is he using these together?
It almost sounds as though we find out inadvertently that something is going on in the basement, then we need to act.
Right.
But if we are totally oblivious, then there's no action to be taken because we don't know what's going on.
Right. As soon as you know, you're responsible. As soon as you know, you're responsible. If you don't know, you're not responsible. Right? The guy kept his chanting to a minimum when he was praying to the idol. You never knew that he was praying to the idol. You're not responsible. But as soon as you know, then you are responsible. And therefore, if you do nothing, don't be surprised if your community suffers the consequences. Let's take a couple modern examples. The guy next door in your apartment building is dealing drugs. You don't know that he's dealing drugs. Responsible or not responsible? Not responsible. Now you know that he's dealing drugs. Are you responsible for alerting the authorities? Or do you keep your nose out of his business? You're responsible. You're responsible. You have to alert the authorities in whichever way you find is safest to what's going on. And if you don't, then that person who now knows that his activity is known in the community will be emboldened, and the community will suffer more and more because he has seen that there are no repercussions to continuing his activities even in the open.
What about the middle case where you purposely put your head in the sand? I don't put my nose into anybody's business.
So I work hard not to be in a position where I might find out, God forbid, that something bad is happening.
Right.
So that is a great middle case, because on the one hand, as Rashi is saying, if you don't know, you don't know. And if you do know, you do know. But if you chose deliberately to live in the woods so that you would never know what was happening in town, then are you abdicating your responsibility? And indeed, that would probably be the best answer, which is that our sages have also admonished us that you don't separate from other people. You don't deliberately isolate yourself so that you are unaware of the problems of your community. It doesn't mean you have to be snooping and investigating constantly, but you also are not supposed to just hide from any possible evidence of wrongdoing.
And if it's not physically hiding, you can emotionally hide.
So then people who are trapped by their own fears, or who are trapped by their own concerns or worries or selfishness and narcissism and other things that make them only worried about themselves, that's a different mental illness kind of condition. But for average people, yes, they are expected to speak up on behalf of the community if they have seen that something is happening wrong. Take another example. You're sitting in your apartment and you hear somebody slapping a child to the point of crying and real sounds of abuse next door. Do you say, it's not my business how that person disciplines the child? Or do you say, you know what, that really sounds like it's gone well beyond a patch on the tush. This is something that is a problem. And I'm not going to go maybe next door because maybe I don't feel I have the right to stop it myself, but I am going to inform the authorities so that they can investigate and see whether there's a problem. Correct? And if you don't, what's going to happen when that child grows up? And with their children, and how they behave in the rest of the community? Our community will be blighted because we knew there was a problem and we did nothing, and that child will know other people heard what was happening to me and did nothing. Why should I ever do anything for them? Right? It is a self-perpetuating cycle. What God is describing here is not just lightning bolts bringing down catastrophe. It is, if you know there is a problem and you do nothing, the problem will get worse and the society will crumble. But we're still left with that kind of, well, what if I kind of sort of don't know, or do I know the unknown versus the reveal? So that's why we have more commentary.
He would also say, the world thinks that a tzaddik nistar, a hidden tzaddik, is a person who conceals his righteousness and his good deeds from others.
All right, so this is talking about this concept of a tzaddik nistar, a hidden tzaddik, a righteous person who is hidden. And one interpretation of that idea is the saintly person who goes around leaving food for the hungry. But they do it quietly and secretly. They don't tell their friends they're doing this. They don't tell the people that they're helping. It's just the food appears. That's a hidden tzaddik. No one knows how righteous they are. So no one's going to say, oh, he's such a righteous person. They don't know the good that he does. But Mendel of Kutsk, the rabbi that's talking here, a Hasidic rabbi, has a different way of reading it. Keep going.
The truth, though, is that a tzaddik nistar is one whose righteousness is hidden and concealed from himself, and who has no idea whatsoever that he is righteous.
But there are some people who do righteousness without realizing what they're doing, without fully appreciating the impact they're having. You know, the person who is kind to the kid who lives next door without knowing what's going on in that family, and gives that kid hope that there are kind people in the world, and gives maybe that person, that kid, an opportunity to now confess that what's been done when they've been abused. They didn't start off trying to be a righteous person. They thought they were just being a nice person, you know, being friendly to the neighbor. They didn't even realize the extent of their righteousness. And that was hidden, just like the transgressions. So sometimes transgressions are hidden and sometimes righteousness is hidden. Maybe-ish, we can see it. All right. let's keep going though about hidden and revealed and acted upon and not acted upon.
Good intentions joins with deeds. Then they that feared the Lord spoke with one another, and the Lord listened and heard, and a book of remembrance was written before him for those who feared the Lord and who thought about his name.
All right, so just real quick, this metaphor from Malachi is one of the places where we get the idea of the idea of a book of life being written, the book of deeds that we talk about in the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur liturgy. That all of our actions have been written before God in the book by our own hand, and that God examines it, he does the accounts, and then he writes who goes in column A and who goes in column B. And you want to be in column A. So how does this verse work? Because it seems to be a little odd.
What is the meaning of and who thought about his name?
Right, okay, we got who feared the Lord. We can sort of understand that, but what does it mean to say you thought about God's name? Now, that should be a capital his. Sorry. Keep going.
Said Rav Asi, even if a person has given thought to doing a religious duty, but was prevented from doing it, Scripture credits him as though he had done it.
Okay, let's make sure we understand that. If you thought about doing something, if you thought about doing a mitzvah, and somehow you got stopped from doing it, do you get points or not? Are you considered to have done a righteous deed even though you didn't do the righteous deed? Right, well, what's this text say? And then we'll compare our own gut feeling to that. What does the text say? You just read it along with me, people. What does it say?
It says yes.
Yes, you get credit, right? So you thought about his name. You were thinking about God. You were thinking about the commandments. You were thinking about good. It was absolutely what you wanted to do. And then something happened that prevented it, right? You had built a house that you were going to give to the orphan couple who you had helped marry, one of the highest mitzvahs you can possibly do. And before they could move in, there was a hurricane. And the hurricane wiped out the house. Okay, so you get no points. No, says the text. You absolutely had done the right thing, and through no fault of your own, you were prevented from fully executing it. The no fault of your own is an important part. Through no fault of your own, you were prevented from fully completing the task. You are considered as though you had completed the task.
Can you assume that it was an act of God that prevented you from fulfilling the task?
You think God doesn't want orphans that are newly married to have a home? No, you would not blame God for doing this. It's not that God deliberately prevented you. It just happened. It's just one of those things, as they say. I know the insurance companies love the phrase an act of God, but just because they want to get it off their books and onto God's doesn't mean they have the authority to make that theological claim. Apology to any insurance people in the room. Okay, but what about the flip side?
Then how do I interpret the verse?
As to bad intention, but I didn't let you finish the other paragraph.
Oh, I'm sorry. As to bad intention, the Holy One does not join it together with the deed. As it is said, if I regarded iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not hear.
All right, so if you think about burning down the house of the orphan couple that just got married, and you get together all the supplies and you're ready to do it, and a hurricane comes and blows away your supplies and leaves their house untouched, does God hold it against you as though you burnt down their house, according to the text? No. No. Good deed and good intention, those can come together. Bad deed and bad intention, you gotta have the deed. If you don't have the deed, it's not held against you. Well, it's not fair, is it? Well, they have the scriptural backup for that.
You know, it's the kind of thing, in the fit of anger, someone will say, oh God, I wish he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really mean it. It's just in a spur of the moment emotion.
Exactly.
That goes away.
Right.
Is it wrong? Yes. Should they be punished for it? No, because they didn't do anything.
Exactly right. And much the same way when President Carter said that he had lusted in his heart,
Right.
Committed adultery because he had lusted in his heart, Jewish law said, no, you didn't.
Right.
Doesn't mean you should go around lusting, willfully and encourage that sort of behavior. But it takes the act to make the transgression. Without the act, there was no sin. And that is apparently different. Even if it was through no fault of your own that you were stopped from committing the sin, you still don't get dinged as having done it the same way you get points for doing a good thing or wanting to do a good thing, even if you're prevented.
In other words, thinking about doing something good is nice. Thinking about doing something bad, but no problem.
Well, it's not to be encouraged, and certainly don't dwell on such thoughts and reinforce them. But you don't have to confess that you had such a plan, as long as you didn't carry it out. However,
then how do I interpret the verse, "Lo, I bring evil upon this people, even the fruit of their intentions"?
which Jeremiah seems to be saying that intentions do matter. Keep going.
In the case of intention that bears fruit, the Holy One, blessed be He, combines the intention with action. In the case of intention that does not bear fruit, the Holy One, blessed be He, does not join intention with action.
All right, so they're splitting this verse again and saying, yes, intention for good is combined, intention for bad is not. We're going to get a stronger proof for that of how to reconcile this in just a second in the next text. Then how?
Then how do I interpret the verse, that I may take the house of Israel in their own heart, from Ezekiel 14:5.
Right, heart being the seat of planning in the metaphor of ancient Hebrew.
Said Rav Aha bar Jacob, that is written with reference to idolatry. For a master has said, the sin of idolatry is so weighty that one who denies idolatry is as though he had confessed to the entirety of the whole Torah.
Confessed to means transgressed in this particular case. So there is one exception to the rule that bad intentions don't matter, and that is idolatry. That if you secretly want to commit idolatry, that alone is something that you will be held accountable for by God. Because idolatry itself is a total and utter refutation of the entirety of the Torah. You can't even truly consider the idea of idolatry without having first removed the underlying beliefs in God as being one and God as being our God in order to make room for idolatry as a possibility. It's not the issue of like, do you know idolatry exists? It's you are actively planning to go bow down and worship this idol. Once you reach that point, you are already liable for idolatry, even if you never carry it out, because it's the space you have to make in your spirit means you are pushing God out in a way that is totally different than any other transgression. Make sense? Okay. Back to our verse.
The hidden things belong to the Lord our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us and our children forever. Why in the Hebrew version are the words "to us and to our children," as well as the first letter of the word "forever" dotted on the top? This teaches that punishment was not inflicted on account of hidden sins until Israel had crossed the Jordan, the words of Rav Judah.
Right. So the dots here is saying it's for our children, right? The ones who cross the Jordan, is that the hidden sins that God is, remember, responsible for, even those were not being prosecuted until we were finally in the land of Israel. That there was a 40-year, if you will, grace period, that even the hidden sins would not be pursued by God as punishable actions. Once we were in Jordan, once we were over the Jordan rather, and once we were in the land of Israel and setting up our communities, then it kicks in that God is now going to hold individuals responsible, and for whatever gets revealed, will then hold the community responsible for if it fails to act with justice. Why? What's the difference between this side of the Jordan and that side of the Jordan?
Our control on Holy Land.
Exactly. Our control in the Holy Land, our whole future in the land of Israel is dependent upon us working as a community. And once we cross the Jordan, we're going to be more spread out than we were when we were living in the camp, having left Egypt. Once we spread out, we will be further from the temple, the Mishkan, the tabernacle. We will be further from our centralized leadership. There will be more room for people to think they can get away with stuff because they'll be, out of sight. And the stakes are much higher, because now it is the land of Israel that we are in jeopardy of losing from this type of activity. So grace period, and then it kicks in.
Is there something about the fact that this is our land, where we have authority and therefore responsibility?
That's a good interpretation as well, that once we are in our own land, we have now the authority to pursue justice, to adjudicate crimes, and to make sure that we are doing what we are supposed to be doing. We definitely had authority within our communities before, when we were in the wilderness, but it is definitely clearer that it's up to us to build a society in this space, and only us. And therefore we have to make sure we do our duties, and God will make sure those who are secretly doing things will also be held accountable. And on that point, continue.
I have a question.
Yes.
It seems like it's somehow connected to what we talked about with the who has a portion in the world to come.
Right.
And if I remember, those people don't. So it's for different reasons than this.
Yes. Right. So the people who were the idolatrous groups that completely reject God.
No, I'm just thinking that when we did that class on the people who have a portion of the world to come, that generation doesn't. But here it's
Yes,
saying
that generation, yes.
But that same generation seems to be spoken about here differently.
Correct. And you'll remember,
I'm
he's
looking for
referring
the
to the
next
discussion in the Mishnah about who has a place in the world to come and not. And they talk about general categories, and then they talk about groups of people. And one of the groups that gets debated is the generation that left the land of Egypt. But remember, the people who are being talked to here are the next generation.
They're the ones that were born.
Exactly. These are the ones who were born after the spies made their mistake, after we were then stuck in the land for the extra time. They were the ones who grew up, hopefully, better than their parents. So it is a different group that's being discussed here. And also, those weren't hidden sins.
Right. It was very obvious.
It was very obvious what people did at that time.
Said to him Rav Nehemiah, and is punishment ever inflicted on account of hidden sins? And has it not been stated until eternity? But just as punishment was not inflicted for hidden sins, so punishment was not inflicted for infractions committed in public until the Israelites had crossed the Jordan.
So Rav Nehemiah doubles down and says, actually, God never punishes hidden sins. He holds account, and after death, there will be a reckoning. But God is never punishing what happens just in private. It's only when it's public, and it's the public sins that were even delayed until after we had gone across the Jordan. So he is making God even more patient, even more willing to tolerate our transgressions for a longer and more obvious period than what Rav Yehuda was trying to say. So there is a real serious walking back of the instinct that we talked about a little bit before of kicking down doors to see what people are doing in their basements. These two rabbis are almost arguing about how much more lenient is God than you might also imagine. And that's leaving us in a position that we shouldn't be comfortable kicking down doors or getting out the microscope and checking things that were beyond our sight.
Carry these laws forward to today. Are we not supposed to? We're not supposed to kick down doors without a warrant or a.
Well, certainly yes, under American law.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of limits on.
That's carrying through the thought process of the Judaic.
I don't know that the writers of the Bill of Rights looked to rabbinic law precisely, but the notion that things that were happening in private where you had no reasonable suspicion did not need to be checked to make sure they weren't happening. But it was only when some suspicion arose that you would then check. That definitely was something that Western society eventually figured out.
Yeah.
We were talking about it a couple thousand years earlier, but eventually Western society figured out that this kind of witch hunt, kill them all and let God sort them out, wasn't a good method. That you did need to build a society by saying, look, if it's private, we don't know. And as long as we are quick to pursue justice once it's revealed to us, then we're doing our job. We don't have to actively search and penetrate the private domain of everybody to prevent sins from happening. We just have to respond once it's become revealed. Right, once it's become revealed. All right, so then we have one more question then. We're going to have to do a little story for this.
Then why was Achan punished? He
Right.
secretly took loot from Jericho against God's command.
Okay, so the question is, okay, well, wait a minute. If God was never punishing secret sins, then Achan, who took loot privately and had it hidden, why would he be punished? And he's going to give his answer.
It was because his wife and children knew about it.
Because it wasn't 100% secret. He told his family. And what should the family have done? They should have turned him in. If a relative comes to you and says, I just murdered someone, I just stole $1 million from the bank, I've got this great new deal where I'm selling drugs, do you just say, oh, that's nice? Again, safety concerns and other things, you don't necessarily have to grab them and handcuff them right there. But justice is important, even when it's family. And when someone has done something that is especially egregious, all the more so we shouldn't let family stand in the way of justice, because it affects all of us. And we wouldn't let them get away with it because of the ultimate damage that's done to us, that they have already inflicted upon us, their family, by choosing to do these acts. Why should we allow them to continue to abuse us as well as the rest of the community? They've shown no regard for us by choosing to break these laws. Why should we be so respectful of them by not turning them in? Does that make sense? Right? Someone who robs a bank has already shown a disregard from the community in which the rest of us live. Why should I show them respect by not turning them in?
It always seems in the media when a father or a parent turns a child in for drugs,
Mm-hmm.
or terrible acts
Right.
of violence. It seems so rare.
Of course. I mean, instinctually, it bothers us completely because we are in a position to protect a loved one. And we think that protecting them means covering up their crimes. But there is a better definition of protection. And that means helping them to fix their crimes and prevent new ones. We're not doing them a favor by letting them continue to do what they're doing. And again, there's lots of different ways to confront them, to get them out of whatever the crime may be, to help them, reestablish themselves, fix their life, and move on. It doesn't mean you call the police and say, drag him away and kill him. It means you don't ignore it while trying to bring it to some healthy conclusion that doesn't involve just, I can't see it. Right? Head in the sand, I think, was the term you used earlier. All right. And our own responsibility and how this works. Very interesting text from Meir Shiloach, a Hasidic master of the 1800s, who gives us a pause for really considering ourselves.
One could say that the answer of the Gemara, because his wife and children knew of it, is not enough. For from this it would seem that not all of Israel, but only the ones who knew of the transgression should have been punished.
Right? Because all of Israel was suffering after what Achan did. And if public just means Achan plus family, why should everyone else outside of his family be in trouble? Good question.
It seems that the matter can be explained in this way. When a man transgresses in secret and is not known to anyone else, then his sin is not pertinent to the whole community of Israel, but it is rather of the secret things that belong to Hashem our God, and he decides on how to deal with that individual. The blessed God is called Rav Chesed, the great one of loving kindness, and he is called the one who tilts the unworthy to the side of mercy. He clarifies the action for the good, and this attribute is only found in the blessed God.
All right, so if it's really, really, really secret, right? You are secretly, doing whatever you do off in the forest, and no one else knows, you haven't told a single soul, it's just you, then God, Rav Chesed, the great master of compassion, will do what is necessary to help bring you back, to bring you to the side of mercy, to help restore you, to help stop what you're doing, and if necessary, arrange for some punishment, but it's between you and God, period, because it is perfectly secret. However,
if there is another person who knows of or witnessed the sin that his fellow had committed, then the sin becomes pertinent to the whole community of Israel. This is because the very act of witnessing another's sin is testimony that the very deficiency also exists within him or within another member of Israel, even if with him it had not even been brought into action. Because of this, he was brought to witness the sin. Certainly the one who saw his fellow man's evil action felt a stir of tshuva in his heart. Therefore, this affair pertains to the entire community of Israel, for all of Israel are responsible for one another.
Right, so it's like a mirror. If you are in a position, and Shiloh believe this as part of an orchestration of God. If God has you in the position to witness a crime, it's because you, or at least some part of the community as a whole, needs to also work on this issue. Maybe you haven't committed the same crime that the guy who you have been arranged to be a witness for is doing, but there's something in you or the community that is very much prone to that crime, and you better check yourself too.
Sounds a little Freudian, doesn't it?
There's a certain bit of, what you see in others as being a flaw is actually also a flaw within yourself. But there's a definite reflexiveness that's happening here that is meant to turn your witnessing of something that is tragic to be more self-analysis and also less us versus him or her. Right? Because as soon as I can recognize that there is a hint of them or their action in me, then I am moved to have more understanding for what they did, even while pursuing justice, and understand that there is a need within our community to stop whatever has been revealed. The hidden things are God. That which has been revealed is all of us, not just the criminal, but all of us need to think about what motivated that criminal, what sparked that criminal, what instinct, what impulse, what desire was being revealed by his or her behavior that is either explicitly or buried within us or the community. And therefore will keep coming up again and again and again until we fix the community, until we fix whatever it is that this person is drawing from to behave in that way. Again, doesn't mean you let the person off the hook. It doesn't mean that you say, oh, well, yes, where we all feel that way sometimes. So you got mad and you beat someone up, that's okay. No. But if you realize we all feel that way sometimes, and when I've seen you now, beating someone, I recognize how wrong it is that we all feel that way sometimes. Let's work to make sure we don't all feel that way sometimes, as well as punish you for what you did. And then people will not feel that way and act that way in the future, and our community will not suffer the catastrophes and the blights that are being described in the Torah. Right? So the sin of someone else is a call to action for the whole community. And that's not just their problem. Yes? Harsh?
No, I think it's really beautiful. It sounds like Tikkun Olam to me.
Yes, because
it's very connected to that whole process of that.
And as you finished in that paragraph, we are all responsible for one another. So we can't just say it's her problem, it's his problem. It's his problem that he did it, but it's our problem that we have that tendency within our community. And again, Meir Shiloh, because of his Kabbalistic underpinnings, believes that this is the way God orchestrates to reveal to the community its own problems. Right, is by making sure the community sees what that guy's doing, so it takes a better look at itself and says, all right, whatever he's doing, we have a seed of that in us, or else God would not have put us in this place at this time to see what that person is doing. It could have been secret, but it isn't. It's revealed. We have to work on it. All right, last paragraph, and then we'll take final comments.
In this fashion does it say in the passage about the one who cursed in Parshat Emor, Vayikra 24:14. And they shall lay their hands upon the head of the one who cursed. This act of placing their hands on his head was exactly as it was done with an animal brought for sacrifice in the temple. All of Israel needed atonement because they had heard the curse, and in him they achieved atonement.
Right, so that his curse was also their responsibility. He was the one who uttered the words, but we as a community, those who were present to hear it, were present for a reason, says Meir Shiloach. They were present because the seeds of it are also within them. And therefore they need to review, reflect, and fix it before it reaches the level that it reached in this person. And before it happens again, either by themselves or by someone else in the community. And as we are now in the final days leading up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that level of soul searching and self-examination as a reflection of also what is in our society is a very important step. I know I've heard so many people who have been just beside themselves with disappointment or anger with how could our country be like this? How could our neighborhood be like this? How could so-and-so do that in our town? Good. Recognizing that these bad actions that have been revealed are bad is absolutely essential. Recognizing that we have some responsibility, either in fostering the feelings that underlie them, or in encouraging them, or in some way not stopping them, because we saw the seeds of it and turned away. And that means it's our responsibility too in the new year to fix it. That's a much more important step to take than just complaining. Question, Mary? I can see you're just on the edge of.
Just a comment, the saying about saving one life is like saving.
It's like to one who saves a life, it's as though they saved the world. Right. Because from every life can come a world. And one who takes a life, it is though they have killed the world. Yes. So get out there and save worlds, people.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shana Tova. Next week, Wednesday, is the day right after Rosh Hashanah, and I am going to beg your indulgence. We will not be having class. I'll probably be catching up on email.